now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 131 of Let's Play on the Story Tinker. And today we have Jessica, for whom this is the first time, and Patty and Carter.
Well, I guess I was asked to introduce myself. So I'm Jessica. I am from the Midwest, and I am a project manager by trade and nerd for fun. So I'm super excited to be here and to talk about Let's Play, which is, I know there's a lot of Midnight Poppyland fans who listen to this, but I have to say Let's Play is probably my favorite out of all the comics on Webtoon, so I'm very excited to be here.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. I actually, I try to get my other friends to be into Webtoons, and I, told them about the other ones that I do. And one of my friends actually read Let's Play, and she was like, I like it. I'm like, what? Because they just usually make fun of me for my Webtoons obsession. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. Are you going to actually read it? And I was like, Let's Play's coming back. You can read it. And she's like, I don't know. I already waste too much time on the internet. I don't think I'm going to start again. I'm like, no. Oh, well, maybe she can be persuaded to change her mind. So,
yes.
So anyway, so we start out with a recap. Now, it's been a super steamy scene between Charles and Marshall. Charles and Sam, sorry. Charles and Sam. No, I have not been having those fantasies in my head, I promise.
Not at all.
So, I think it's because Sam's like a boy's name, so it does kind of throw me off. But yeah, sorry. And we recap with Sam enjoying herself very, very much with Charles, which is awesome. And that we discussed in the last episode. And we continue, and we have this outside view of his apartment, and Sam is leaning over like the Fae Island, whatever it's called.
Yes, the morning after.
She had like one Irish coffee. How much whiskey is there in that thing?
Well, well, they could have been heavy-handed, who knows? But I can tell you, like, if you're not a regular drinker, it doesn't take much.
I was gonna say, Sam doesn't seem like a regular drinker at all. So
yeah,
Sam's definitely a lightweight.
Yes.
Oh.
Bless her. She even has her inhaler out.
I know. I was like, she needed that inhaler before. I was so worried that she would need that inhaler before, but she was like gasping all the time. So, but she made it, which is nice to know.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting is, focus on what seems like a penthouse apartment for Charles. No. So where does he have the money? Like, does Young Technologies pay Sam, or not Sam? Does Young Technologies pay Charles a boatload, or does he come from money? I'm thinking with fencing as his background that he maybe comes from money, but I thought it was interesting that Mangi chose to, focus on the penthouse. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're probably trying to tell us this for a reason. So that was just something I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think part of his character is like being like sort of rich and having that like lifestyle. But I don't think he like comes from money because his mom was like a teacher. I think he's just like really successful. And I think he does probably get paid a lot.
Or, I mean, if the fact that his mom's a teacher, it could also just be showing us that he comes from money, but his family is more grounded, maybe. I don't know, because I'm a little bit of a thrifty kind of person, unless it's like on traveling, sorry. But in most cases, I'm like, I really don't spend a lot of money. And I'm like, why would you spend so much money on a penthouse? I'm like, to me, I associate it with like an ego thing. And he doesn't strike me as very egotistical. Like he doesn't, he's confident, sure. And like, I'm sure he respects himself, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who thinks he's better because of money. So I'm also wondering why he would spend all this money on a penthouse.
Well, let's one of the things that we know about Charles is that he's not much for emotional entanglements, and his relationships are very at arm's length with people. So what do you do with your time when you don't have relationships? Most people, what I have found in my line of work is that they replace it with things.
Interesting.
So I think like him having creature comforts is his own little way of soothing himself. I could be reaching here, but that's my read on it.
And supporting that, if you go back to his like past, the house he lived in with his ex-wife wasn't like a mansion or anything.
That's
So
very
that
true.
Definitely could be possible.
Interesting.
I put my tinfoil hat on a little bit and I'm like, maybe he had a lot of money in the divorce. I mean, maybe his ex was really rich and because she cheated, he walked away with money. Who knows?
It is
like
possible.
That would be such bitter changed money then, I feel, because if it comes from that, I would be like, hell, I don't want to use this. This is like dirty money, you know? Yeah, well, I don't know. I wonder if we'll get more of an insight into that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's investing in cryptocurrency.
Maybe. Don't get me started on that. My husband's trying to do that and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, no strong opinion. But anyway, this is not like an economics podcast. So she rubs her head and she's like, my head is splitting. It's because of the whiskey. I feel awful. And
yes,
like,
Sam, it's because of the whiskey.
Right, man. Yeah, she definitely does not read as someone who has ever been drunk.
Yeah.
And she's like, I think I can remember most of what happened last night. And we remember all of her like super embarrassing moments where it's like, she's slapping him, she's grinding on him. Like, whoa, Sam, I did not know you had that in you.
This is just, this is her completely uninhibited. And what I find really hilarious about all this is we're going through the panels because I mean we've gone over this a million times, but she's remembering it in a very judgmental way of herself. Like, I can't believe I did all of this. Like, oh my God, let me hide under a rock for the rest of my life kind of embarrassment.
Can I talk to you?
Yeah. Okay, we're back.
Okay. But yeah, she obviously was very forward that night. And even that morning, I think she was more forward than she's ever been before. And like, knowing Sam, she's the type who's like, oh my God, this is not me. I'm going to cower and hide. Where is a giant rock in your yards, Charles, so that I might hide underneath it?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I mean, she's already like, her posture is indicative. Besides her headache, it's also like a shame and, not upright and, confident.
Yeah, she's doing like a play-by-play in her head, like she's ruminating. But sorry, lame joke. And then she says something really interesting. She's like, "Is that what I'm like when I'm drunk?"
I wonder if she will want to become drunk again, if she might use that as a way of feeling uninhibited. And I know that, I mean, obviously many people do that because they feel like they can't express certain things otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if she ends up doing that.
Yeah, I think we'll see drunk Sam again.
Yeah.
Bless it.
And Charles is being very sweet. He gives her a coffee. He's like, here you are, Samira, coffee. Would you like some toast? He's like, oh, no, don't trouble yourself. Not feeling very comfortable. Charles is very comfortable. Obviously, it's his house, but Samira is not used to having like a guy do things for her, being in a guy's house, having just done what they did. I mean, this whole situation is very awkward for her.
Yeah. Especially since he's technically her boss.
And
her dad is his boss.
Yeah.
Awkward dynamics.
Very.
So, I mean, you kind of hinted on it, Mindy, but it's very obvious that Charles puts Sam first, her needs are definitely very forefront, like coffee, breakfast, are you comfortable? What can I do to take care of you? I think we see that a lot in this episode of like his, I don't want to say nurturing because that's not right, but like giving nature to Sam in particular. I think this is going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out in the season with how giving Charles is, but at the same time how guarded he is. Patty, as you mentioned, like he keeps people at arm's length. Like it's hard to do that. It's hard to be giving but also keep people at a distance. So this is gonna be
100%.
And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was completely surprised at his behavior with Samara, like this whole arc, because I was like, you're just a sweetheart. Like, you're a nice guy. And like, I thought your whole thing is like, I'm not going to close to anyone. I'm like, you clearly are. You're acting like you're her boyfriend. So what are you gonna do? I personally think he's gonna run away to England or wherever they invited him.
Yeah, he's felt, and I've seen this over their interactions, even from the first season, that, you know, when they're interacting, he does a lot of caretaking type activities with her. And I think it's, you know, some of it is he senses her, I don't want to say fragility, but he senses that, you know, she needs that extra boost, you know.
Well, the Youngs have really sheltered her. Like, we see that constantly. I mean, that's, her shelteredness, I think maybe is probably what you're going for, right?
Yeah. And like, if we look at his initial body language when he approaches her with a cup of coffee, he just does a very brief check-in. Like, he's not diving headfirst into what they just did, because he knows what she's probably thinking and how she's, you know, in self-deprecation mode, because that's her default mode. And, you know, he just does something really simple, like, can I get you something? Or, you know, how are you doing? And it's still a little awkward between them, but I appreciate that he does those little check-ins.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, sorry, Mindy, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry. I was gonna say, do we have any thoughts about like why Charles chose to not face the same way Sam did? Like, he purposely put like opposite facing directions, and that seemed weird to me. So I'm curious. I wanted to open up the question to the group. Why did he sit like that?
Yeah, I think it's because he could tell she was embarrassed and uncomfortable. So he was like trying to be respectful to that.
Oh, he's such a good guy.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think that's what I wrote in my notes, was that like he's not, I think he knows that like direct facial contact when it comes to this kind of stuff is hard for her. And so he's giving her that space of like, okay, your body language is totally closed. You're not ready to face me with this yet. So let me disarm this a bit and let me face away from you. So yeah, spot on, Carter.
Yeah, I think that's part of why Charles likes her, because she's like so like innocent and sweet, as opposed to his ex-wife, who like hurt him really deeply. So like him like seeing how different someone could be, and like how much sweeter and nicer someone could be, is like sort of what's making him fall for her.
Yeah.
Well, she even seems to be super different from, was it Miss Rosewood and
Eva?
Ben's, thank you.
Definitely.
Like, super different. So I mean, Carter, you're right. I think she is just the polar opposite of everything else.
Yeah, like the fact that she's so different from everyone else that he's been with is like what's making him like open to like being with someone again. Like, even though he still like said he doesn't want a relationship, like we saw in earlier chapters with like the ice melting, which was symbolic of him like being open to a relationship again. And he's still not ready to admit it to himself, because he's still saying, you know, I'm not interested in a relationship. But I think he's already like fallen for her, and as it goes on, he'll realize and admit to himself, oh, I want to be with Sam.
And I'll talk a little bit about this later when we get in, you know, deeper with the conversation, but he's definitely in a state of ambivalence, like you were saying, Carter, because there's part of him that wants to dive into this, because I think he identifies with the softness in Sam. He, you know, he has been with very dominant women, if we look at his past relationships, and Sam is I don't want to say submissive, but she's more tender. And I think he identifies with that little broken piece of him somewhere deep down identifies with that.
Yeah. And I think he chose those tough women because he didn't want a relationship. He wanted someone who would be able to, you know, just use him and dispose of him, because he wasn't ready to give his heart away again.
Yeah, I think he finds himself like enjoying caring for her, and like enjoying like helping her like be stronger and like be a more confident person, like with the self-love exercises. And he's never had a relationship where he can like help someone improve themselves like that, because they've all been like you said, dominant women.
Right.
Well, not to dive too much into past episodes, but if you remember when we like first saw the flashback of Charles finding out his wife was having the affair, he kind of seemed like a dwarfy dude. which like
Mhm.
I'm all for, but he kind of gave off some dorky vibes. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if he sees some of his old self in Sam, and he was like, I've
Maybe.
been there. You know, maybe he had somebody who helped him out, or who knows, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember that. He does seem like he's much more polished now, which also maybe, you know, he's older also. And I know for myself, I hope I'm more polished than I was when I was like 22. But
It gets easier,
yeah.
Carter, I promise.
Yeah, being an adult is nice.
Not fun.
Well, wait, no, it is fun. It's
No.
better than being a teenager. Sorry.
Okay, that's fair. But the bills and all the other stuff is not fun. But anyway, we digress. I'm sorry.
Right. I know. Should we get another podcast? But anyway, so yeah, let's go back to the episode. He asks her, "How does your stomach feel?" And she's like, "A little queasy, but not too bad." And he looks at her, because how he's, you know, analyzing her, and he just sees that blush. You know, it's shining through her hair, and she's still refusing to look at him. And he asks her about it. He's like, "Are you trying to avoid me, Samira?" And she's like, jumps up. Oh, yeah.
It's kind of funny too, because I was wondering, like, why would she flip out over that? Because at first, like, when I saw the preview panels, because I'm on Mongi's Patreon, and when I saw the preview panel, I was like, did he just sit down and scare the crap out of her? Because that's what it looks like. But I think she was taken off guard by his question, because I don't think she expected him to dive any deeper.
Right. She probably was hoping he would keep things superficial, but
yeah,
he doesn't do that. Yeah, he's always been one to push her buttons and try to make her grow by doing that.
So what happens when he can no longer help her grow?
That is a great question.
Oh,
I'm not expecting answers. I'm just putting it out there, or putting that out there as stuff for us and for listeners to think about.
Well, by the time that happens, she'll be like a fully realized, like, confident person, and then they can just be together.
Well,
I am all for that, Carter. Let's do that. That's what I want.
You're so optimistic. Bless you. I wish I could be that optimistic, but part of me is like, I know this is a romance, and I know that the end game with a romance is for people to end up together, but we aren't nearly there yet. And so I'm like, oh, what is this going to turn out like?
I definitely think there will be a distancing, some kind of conflict with their relationship, whether it's he'll move away, whether it's he'll reject her for a while until he figures himself out, whether he actually genuinely can't make the next step and can't follow his heart, which that would be sad. I hope that the characters end up all being like redeemed. But you know, I love your question, Jessica, because I know that sometimes people choose people who need them because they need to feel needed. And maybe, I don't know if this is going to happen in the story, but in real life and maybe in other stories, you can, once a person has like evolved, you don't feel needed anymore. And then you're like, I don't want to be with you. So that would be, that's a great question.
Yes.
I don't see him as having that need, but I will say, when I think about like Charles' relationship with Sam, like I would never want to be with someone who I had to develop. I'm like, you know, I would feel like I'm their parent. You know, I'm like, I don't want to parent my partner. I want to
developing each other, because he's helping her like be more confident or whatever, and then she's teaching him to like be more open and like love again.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Because if you see what's interesting here, and this openness piece, when we get back into the next panel, is that Sam actually feels okay with opening up to him and talking about this. And I was actually kind of surprised, because I was like, oh, she's actually going to go there. She's actually going to say something. And she faces him very briefly, and then she gets embarrassed and turns back in. But she still says what's on her mind. She's like, it's because I'm embarrassed. And what I love that Charles does next is he doesn't hyperbolize it. He doesn't like make a big deal of it. He just says, oh, why are you embarrassed? Again, another check-in question.
I think he knows why she's embarrassed.
Oh, without a doubt.
Sure. But he's wanting her to kind of work through it on her own and feel okay with talking about it.
Exactly.
which, yeah, definitely. I know we talked about this on the 129 podcast, I think, about like differing levels of sexual experience. And, you know, my husband had a lot more sexual experience than I did because I had zero. And yeah, I was very uncomfortable talking about sex when we first got married. I was like, I didn't want to tell him how I felt, or I didn't want to tell him what to do. It was super embarrassing. Right. And I was like, yeah, it was like my husband, but it took a long time for me to get comfortable with that kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like what is it, like a 8-year age difference?
Yeah. Charles is 30 and Sam is 22, I believe.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is quite a bit, you know. Yeah, because when you're that young, it's more pronounced, and then as you get older, it's not as big of a deal. Like my husband's 5 years older than me, which, you know, if I was a teenager, yeah, that would be a kind of a big deal. But you know, she's getting there, and I think I kind of like how there's an age gap too, because, you know, like we had talked about on the 128 podcast, Mindy, you had said that he has this very experienced, calm demeanor when it comes to stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that relates back to when Sam was like feeling insecure that Charles already had all of his firsts, but then she got a new perspective from the man on the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was some good wisdom. I like sometimes she like monkey drops like really great pieces of life advice in her like episodes. I'm like, man, that's like stuff you can find on a fortune cookie. Like, this is great.
Yep. It's like a grandma. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she says, you know, in response to his question of why she was embarrassed, she says, for my behavior last night, I was completely out of line. I said and did things I shouldn't have. And then this morning I have this gorgeous man on top of me. Oh, and he smiles, whose every touch made my skin feel like it was on fire. And when that heat moved from my skin to my chest and then my belly, I ended up, and then he goes, coated in the early morning dew.
This killed me. I died. Like, I was reading this at midnight and I had to like, I had to like clamp my hand over my mouth and bite my finger because I was like, Jesus Christ, I cannot wake up my husband. But
so I looked up that expression. I was like, is it an expression? I wondered if he just made it up or if it was like a well-known phrase that I just didn't know. I didn't find any reference to it. So I guess it's his original phrase.
It's funny. I want you to look at, though, like, let's back up just a little bit, because Sam is going into, even though she's embarrassed, she's talking a lot about how she enjoyed their encounter and how she enjoyed her time with him for multiple things. And look at his response. Look at his facial expression. That is a man who is very pleased with himself. He's like, oh, hell yes. You know, and not to say that he's being completely smug about it, but, you know, can you imagine whoever your partner is, or even somebody that you're remotely interested in, saying like, I really liked when you did X, Y, or Z. Like, yeah, it's an ego boost. It's a nice thing to hear. So I don't know that he gets that from other women. I would venture to say he doesn't. So it's kind of cute to see that like mildly smug look on his face.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of goes. Oh, sorry, Carter, go ahead.
Sorry. He's definitely got some confidence from being way more experienced as opposed to his past partners who might have been like close to his level or like equal.
Right.
So I want to talk about this confidence question, because if we go to like the conversation that they had in the car, you know, Sam's like, I don't want to have to defend like you from yourself or something along those lines.
Right.
Or she like admitted she needed to defend him. And, you know, Patty, if we're talking about how this was a big ego boost, how big is Charles' confidence actually? Or is it a really nice facade? And also, you know, I think it's pretty clear that like his hair is a symbolism of like how in control he is of a situation, I would argue. And right now his hair is very unkempt. So, you know, now that his hair is unkempt, are we actually seeing the more real version of Charles versus the facade that he chooses to put on that we've seen for the majority of the past 2 seasons? Okay.
Oh, I definitely agree with that, because for lack of a better term, lets his hair down around her. literally and figuratively. You know, they both feel safe with each other. And Carter, I think you touched on this when you had said like, you know, he feels comfortable being himself around her, she feels comfortable being around him. And they don't have to go into pretense mode, but when they're out in public, they're very much in pretense mode.
Yeah, to me it's like, I don't view 𝗪𝗓𝗁 as lack of control. I view it more as being comfortable. And when he's slicked up, it's like, this is my work, you know, professional appearance presentation, and I have to be more rigid and yes, in control. But I think the 𝗪𝗓𝗁 is more positive rather than negative.
Yeah, so Charles is like definitely a very confident person, but he's like insecure about like his relationship with women. So he's like scared to like get back into another real relationship. So like he's just been like hooking up and not having any emotional connection like with Eva and Rosewood. But then with Sam, it's like, you know, he's letting his hair down and he's letting himself be part of that again and be really with someone again.
Yeah. And kind of touching on what we had talked about in the episode 128 podcast, Mindy, there was this bit where we talked about couples kind of complementing each other and like finding pieces of like what they're missing or what they need in their lives. And what I really see is that, and we find this out a little bit more into this episode, is that Sam is emotionally aware of herself. And I feel like she's more in tune with her emotional state than Charles is. And Charles is more sexually confident, you know, or, you know, when it comes to matters of like work or, you know, status, power, and sex, things that are typically associated with men, he feels very confident in that realm, but he feels very uncomfortable and not as confident with emotions.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's like two magnets. Right. So, and yeah, and I love how open she is being with him. She may not be able to look him in the eye, but she is talking about how she felt when they were making out. And that was, you know, that's great to be able to be open like that about something, especially when you're so inexperienced. And, you know, so he makes this joke and she's like, it sounds so bad when you say it that way. I'm just like, nope, it's not bad. Don't worry. And she's like, I'm mortified. I'm going to feel like I'm going to throw up. And she's just like sizzling over there. Aww. And I love it.
And we know he's teasing her. Like, I know, like, he's cracking a joke to kind of like ease the mood a little bit. And he's teasing her, but I like how he stops when he notices it makes it worse.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, he's super respectful. He's like, I'm sorry too. I was trying to help you feel good this morning, not embarrass you. Which, oh, I love it. I don't know how he became such a gentleman. Like, where did he learn this from? I don't know, but it's amazing.
Yeah. And notice how Sam peeks up. She uncovers part of her face when he says that, because I don't think she expected him to do that. Like, she probably was going to continue to be mortified.
Yeah, she expected him to be like unhappy, like with what happened, and like see her, because like in the previous chapter, she like sees her as a kid. So I think she's sort of worried that like after what happened, Charles is gonna see her that way too. But then so she like expects Charles to just see her that way. But then she's surprised when, oh, he's actually understanding and okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he goes back to what she was originally saying, you know, about being drunk. Says, though you were behaving out of the ordinary last night, you were drunk. I don't fault you for that. And in terms of the morning dew situation, you never have to apologize for something like that. At least not with me. Oh, yo.
Can I say something? Can I say something about that whole exchange? The prior to all of this, we get lots of background information on Sam judging herself harshly, the way that she would expect someone else to judge her based on what happened last night. And the thing that I love is that Charles kind of explains, he's like, hey, look, I get it. You were drunk. It's not that big of a deal. you know, I don't fault you for that, which is his way of saying, I don't think less of you because of that.
Yeah, she sort of always expects the worst. Like she expects
Yeah.
everyone else to judge her as harshly as she judges herself. And then she gets paranoid, and in her head it's like, oh, I think this, I'm embarrassed, so he must be unhappy with what happened too, because I'm unhappy.
Anxiety.
Yes.
That's a very good point, where, you know, sometimes people just live this whole nightmare in their head that thankfully doesn't reflect reality.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really love here, because he goes on to say, like, and in terms of the morning dew situation, you never have to apologize for something like that, at least not with me. And I really love this, especially, you know, not to get on like a pedestal or anything, but like, I really love this in comics where there are people of varying ages reading this, because here's the thing, sex is very stigmatized. It's very, you know, it's in a lot of cultures is treated as very shameful. You shouldn't talk about it. You shouldn't think about it, that kind of thing. And this really helps destigmatize that, because I think the other thing with Sam is she feels shame about her body. She wants to cover it up. She doesn't want people to see it, or she thinks that it's not okay. And this is kind of his way of saying, you don't have to feel that way. You know, that what you were feeling and what was going on was totally normal. And I absolutely love that that was included here.
Right, because then when young, inexperienced readers are reading this,
Yeah.
they see how Charles reacted, and they're like, oh, I don't have to be embarrassed. Or maybe they did have an experience where they were inexperienced.
Yeah.
And the person didn't react how Charles did and was like displeased with them. So they could read that and see, oh, not all guys are like that. I don't have to be embarrassed.
Aww.
Exactly. So cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and the way he's, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Jessica.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm the type of person who asks lots of questions, more for like asking people to think than actually asking for answers. So I apologize in advance. But why is Charles facing away from her in the panel about though you were behaving out of the ordinary last night? Like, why don't we see his face? Like, what are we trying to see by seeing the back of his head?
I think he's, well, hang on here. Am I getting ahead of myself? I am getting a little ahead of myself, but I think there's a smidge of him that is also embarrassed by his behavior.
That's what I was thinking.
Definitely.
He's somehow trying to hide his, you know, we're again going back to the confidence, not confident emotionally, not confident with relationships. He's protecting himself from the vulnerability that he's expressing to Sam right now by not showing his face to her when talking about this. That's kind of how I interpreted it as well.
Yeah, because if you go into the next panels, he says, I should have taken things a bit slower, so you wouldn't have ended up being overwhelmed, but I let my excitement and enthusiasm get the better of me. And for that, I asked for your forgiveness.
And he's sweating while he says that. So that's a really good point. Maybe he, that's really great that maybe he feels like, I shouldn't have done that. But I have to say, if I was Sam and she's blushing, that would be a major compliment. If he was excited. Yeah.
Well, and I put in my notes because like I go through the episode again and I just jot things down, and like one of my notes was in all caps, Jesus, can I clone this man? Because you rarely see that. And granted, I know that this is a story, so things are going to be a little bit idealized, but you know, it's really nice to see like both of them are taking ownership of their behavior, and neither one is pushing the proverbial buttons of like, you're screwed up. Why did you do that? Da, 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 da. You know, they're not going into that.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of my husband. My husband is like, the same dynamic. I was, 20, he was 27. I had zero sexual experience. He, because he had grown up not religious like me, he had a normal, whatever, quite a few girlfriends before me. And he's super, super, super sexually chill and easygoing and kind and like all the nice things. And I mean, it's something that like I really, really, really appreciate. So I saw that a lot when reading this. I really thought about my husband's behavior.
So I love often in comic or in like webtoons particular, you often see the comment like we stand for good communication.
Right.
That's like all this is
Mhm.
like, it's really healthy, you know, good communication between between partners, even though they're not partners at this point. I mean, but that's what's going on. And, you know, we talk about, we'll see it here in a second, Charles' use of jokes to lighten the mood and help like de-escalate the tension and like bring everybody back to a common ground. I mean, I'm not trying to get my hopes up, but man, they're laying down some really great foundation for a solid relationship. The ship is building. It is like, we are putting down planks. Come on.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I have, you know, in my profession, one of the things that's really great is you get to use a lot of different mediums to make a point or to help illustrate, you know, what you're trying to get at with your client. And I love using webtoons, one, because it's a great self-care and you know, just coping skill kind of thing. But a lot of these webtoons, and not to tout my feminist horn here, but like the female creators are really fantastic at creating great dialogue and having great little tidbits of wisdom with their characters and demonstrating what healthy relationships look like. And, you know, just it makes my little therapist heart sing. And I'm like, I want to share this with people because this is so damn cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a particular comic I'm thinking of that I think deals with like some mental health issues so well.
Yeah. So and this one does it really well too. I love the personification of emotions. Yes. It's huge. I love it.
It's so brilliant. Whew, it's awesome.
Goodness.
So now our dear Charles actually has a really funny joke. And he's like,
yes,
you came into this world premature. Why stop there? So cute. And you're like,
I love it.
Funny.
I love it. And you notice that he did that to kind of break up his own embarrassment.
Yeah,
that was a little bit of deflection there, sir.
Yeah, but it's really funny. That joke had to be said. It was necessary.
Yeah, and I think it was also to kind of like grab her attention because she wasn't saying anything, and so, you know, just to be like, I'm gonna tease you, but I'm also wanting to get your attention.
Oh, yep. And he tells her, he's like, I have more experience in these matters than you do, so I should have taken things slower. If you wish to continue our tete-a-tete, then I will be sure to take greater care of your delicate nature. And here I agree, he is looking away from her. And Jessica, I do agree, because he's still embarrassed. And he's kind of taking the next step now, right? He's making a proactive move, being like, hey, you want to do more? And that is putting him in a bit of a vulnerable position.
Yeah. And he's saying, if you want to, he's not expecting her to say yes or no one way or the other. He's just putting it out there so that she doesn't feel like, oh, I don't know what he's thinking and feeling.
Yeah. And he did that earlier when he asked her, like, do you want to touch me? Right. He again gave her the opportunity because he knows she's very embarrassed to bring it up. It was already hard enough for her the first time. So he's giving her these windows.
Yeah.
For someone who's emotionally constipated, he's pretty good at like expressing his emotions, because also he says earlier, you know, I'm not rejecting you, I'm just rejecting your proposition. Like he's very transparent with Sam in regards to how he's viewing her through all of this, which is, I'm very confused as to how to interpret how you can be so upfront with your emotions, but at the same time not upfront with your emotions.
I have an answer for you on that.
I'm excited.
Okay, so typically when people are more open about emotions when it comes to others, it's because, you know, Charles is definitely very empathetic and he can sense emotions. He can read people. He knows how to do that because deep down, he does have that empathy. It's easier for people to want to care for another person and their feelings and emotions, and they can connect to that, than it is to admitting and feeling their own emotions. Because if you notice, he connects with the emotion when it has to do with Sam, not when it has to do with himself. So it's more of a, here, let me pay attention to you and your needs so that I don't have to address my own.
Yeah. Oh,
And the sticky part is in therapy is to get the client to actually address their own issue and not the other person's.
Well,
I think with time, though, that Sam will force Charles to address his own issues because we've already slowly started to see it. It's going to take time.
right.
Yes.
The face grab that morning, that was all about him. She says, I worry you're unhappy. She sees through him.
Yes.
Oh, yes, she does. And that scares the shit out of him. I guarantee it.
I think that's going to be what scares him away from Sam more than anything is how much she sees through him.
Yeah.
I definitely think there'll be a moving away, and the job overseas will be the perfect opportunity for him to run away from the challenge before him.
Most definitely. Oh gosh. And then like she catches him completely off guard, and it's hilarious. She's like
eyes get so
globs onto him, and I love it.
Nestles into his neck, which by the way is so sweet. Oh my god, love that kind of cuddling. She's like, only if you want to. Blush, blush, blush. Oh, so sweet. Again, so sweet. The sugar, the syrup.
We're all gonna get diabetes.
So do you guys think it's safe to say that Sam's love language is touch?
Oh yeah.
I
don't know, but I also don't really think in terms of love languages, so I don't look out for it, you know.
That's fair. I just, with how often she uses that with Charles, I'm wondering if that is her love language, and you see it again really much so in this episode. So just curious for thoughts.
Yeah. And it's interesting because also Sam does this thing where she asks him and says, if you want to. Like she's giving him an out. Like she keeps giving him an out. Like, I'm embarrassed. I shouldn't have done this. I'm so sorry. And now she's like, we can do that, but only if you want to.
Right. She still expects him to not want her because she still has that insecurity about him being out of her league.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know if, you know, when we're looking at this, you know, I don't know that he expected as positive a response from her or as intimate a response from her with this. And I think that's what really destabilized him here.
Yeah, it's a very, like, it's affectionate like that. You know, it's intimate is the good word for it. Oh,
because she's reciprocating that intimacy, and he wasn't anticipating that.
Yeah, and she says, even though I was embarrassed this morning, it was still nice being held by you. I trust that you will take good care of me, just like you did last night while I was drunk. And she says it softly. He's hiding, and you know, he's first shocked, but then as she continues, he smiles, and she says, and maybe next time I can take care of you, and you can teach me how to make you feel good too. And it's, oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I think like the reason why we are not seeing the lower half of Charles at this point, poor guy is hiding it. Bless it. Like, because she's saying things to him that he probably doesn't hear. Like, because the other women that he's with, it's all about them. And you know, she's using words, and I think it's interesting here because we're coming up on a scene where the chains come into play, but she's using words like trust and care, which how often does he hear stuff like that?
Yeah, she's showing that she believes in him, in his kindness, and other people are not tapping into that part of him. You know, he's being tapped into like his prowess, his creativity, his organization, like whatever skills he's using at work, people are appreciating him for, but nobody at this point in his life is appreciating him for his softer part of him, for the kindness. And she's really building him up in that, you know, and telling him, I believe that you are a really good person.
Right. And maybe this might be a bit of a reach, but maybe like the last time that someone said stuff like that to him was his ex-wife, because he said earlier that she reminded him of his ex-wife. So maybe he's like, oh wow, he's like part of his like hesitancy to like be with her is that she's like being open with him, or like saying and acting similarly to his wife in some way, his ex-wife in some ways, but then he'll also see that she's very different from his ex-wife in a lot of ways too, and wouldn't do what his ex-wife did.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, because we don't know a lot of the history behind him and his ex-wife. We don't know, like, maybe things were great in the beginning. And the thing that I've learned over the years is that you can have a fantastic relationship and still have it fall apart spectacularly, because people do grow apart. People do, you know, change and grow, and sometimes they don't always change and grow together.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm curious if we'll get more insight into why she cheated.
Yeah.
I think if he goes back overseas, which we're all thinking it's back like home, right? I think that's going to force him to confront things, because it's a perfect opportunity for him to run into Gwen, or run into his old life, or
that's a good point.
You know, I think that him going back home is going to open up some old wounds.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, perfect storm.
Sam would be the reason he stays and doesn't take the job, but
I hope you're right.
I don't think so, though. I mean,
well,
if it's his dream job, I hope he takes it.
Like at first he was like, no, and then he only decided to think about it once he realized it was a ton of money.
Yeah. That's a good point. He didn't perk up until he heard the money, which again begs the question, what's with the money thing?
The penthouse. Well, I mean, I think most people, you know, if it's a ton of money, it's, I don't know. I've never been rich, so I don't know if I'll ever reach a point where like money like doesn't matter at all. But I'm assuming at some point it will. I hope. But yeah, I'm totally predicting. Like, here's how I think it'll happen. Where I think Sam might push him a little too much and might maybe expect more than he's able to give, and then he'll be like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goes away. Good. I love your idea, Carter, of him dealing with like the ghosts of his past, and then making him reconsider and think about everything in his life, and then realizing, oh my God, I want love. Run back to Sam.
Yeah. Could it be exactly that, like little speed legs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mongi, we need speed legs, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and we kind of know that like this like relationship or whatever you want to call it with Charles and Sam isn't gonna last, because at some point Sam and Marshall, like there's no way the story is gonna end without Sam and Marshall getting together, if not temporarily.
Yeah.
And I also don't see the story going on for very long where Sam and Charles are like in a relationship. Like I don't think they're gonna like date for a while in the story. So I feel like there's definitely gonna be like something where she pushes him too far. Just because we know that if there's gonna be something with her and Marshall, there's no way.
There's been too many hints at it, and I have to agree with you there. There's something there, and with Monica and him just conveniently going on a break.
Right. And with the art,
I see like, that
he's an artist and she needs an artist for her game.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And oh my God, this panel, let's take a look at this one. And
this is the panel. This is the reason you wanted to do this episode, right, Patty?
Yes, because of the chains in the background.
And I didn't notice until you just mentioned it, Patty. So yeah, give it. What's up?
So like I thought a long time about this, because I'm like, is he trying to maintain sexual restraint? Is he trying to maintain emotional restraint? And I know that on the Discord there's been some talk a little bit about either side, and honestly I think that it's both. Because there's part of him that he keeps locked away, that he doesn't want to go there, and she's, again, this comes after she says things like trust and care and, you know, you've been good to me and I want to be good to you, and I don't know if he knows how to take that right now. I don't think he's ready for that. And he's also still very sexually interested in her. Like, yes, he connects with her, but let's be real, he's a hot-blooded man and she's a gorgeous woman, and I'm sure that he is trying to restrain himself right now.
Yeah, his expression to me does seem to be more soft and tender rather than sexually excited. But yeah, I mean, you can be both.
I personally think it can be both.
Right.
Because look what he does next. He's like, you youngs and your clinginess. And notice that he doesn't answer her question. He deflects from that quickly. Like what's interesting, and this is where I can tell where his ambivalence is like he's teasing her about her clinginess
and then
he's pulling her in
at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, homeboy, you are just as fucking clingy. Excuse my French. Like, come on, dude. But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that, you know, for him it's restraint on both ends.
And his sigh is in the shape of a heart, so
yes,
so cute.
He can't help it. He's like, I can't help falling in love with you. Yes.
I feel like it's like more, I feel like if I were to pick one, I would say it's like emotional control, because he's like very sexually confident, but then in terms of like his emotional, because like that's the only relationships he has is sexual, but then in terms of like emotional relationships, that's where he like struggles because of how broken he is from his ex-wife. So what he's finding with Sam is that he's like having feelings for her versus like Eva or Rosewood. He doesn't have feelings for her, but he's finding himself having feelings for someone even though he doesn't want to. And like that control, him like trying not to have feelings for her and him trying to like restrict having feelings for her because he doesn't want to have feelings for anyone. Like that's what the control is. But he's like losing the control because he can't stop the feelings he has for Sam.
Yeah, because he has a history of vulnerability and betrayal that's related to vulnerability. So I can see that.
At the end of season 2, you know, we see the control figure, right, with multiple chains. So do we expect at the end of all those chains are various emotions? So like think Inside Out, right? Joy, anger, fear, sadness, or because it's not just one thing he's controlling multiple things. So just, you know, I guess, you know, I don't know, just again, more rhetorical questions for the universe.
Yeah, I do
know. I like that.
Right. I think we'll see all of his emotions.
I hope so. That'd be fun.
I feel like
his little people.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, the curious. Yeah,
Patty. But speaking of the comment you made earlier, his coffee cup is strategically placed.
Right.
Yes. So I'm like, because I mean, yeah. He still wants her in so many ways, and it's very obvious. And you know what you were saying earlier, Carter, that he feels, you know, we've been talking about how he feels more confident sexually, and like he not only deflects her question and says you youngs and your clinginess, but he's pulling her in physically to where he's feeling more confident. So I think, you know, again, there's this test of ambivalence. Because the next thing out of his mouth is, what should I do with you? I think he's asking that question. My friend Aileen and I, we were talking, and I think he's asking that question to himself, not necessarily to her. Like, what the hell do I do here? I am having conflicting emotions.
Oh, it's great when your inner thoughts just blurt out without you being able to stop them.
Oh God.
She's stroking his chest and she's like, do you want me to stop? And he looks at her, pauses, and he sees her adorable puppy dog face, which is pouting. And he just hugs her back in. He's like, I don't mind, Bunty. Not when it's you. You can't keep giving me that look. And he's like, damn. Like,
yeah. He got an answer to his question of what do I do with you? She can do no wrong in his eyes. That's what that said to me. And that he just completely comes apart when she looks at him like that.
Yeah, he kind of slams her into his neck because he's like, I can't look at those eyes anymore. I'll just melt into a puddle.
I really liked his lines that says, "I don't mind Bunty, not when it's you." Like, I think
Yeah.
that's very telling of where he's at with both past and with Sam emotionally a little bit. I don't think he allowed clinginess or someone to be as forward as Sam, because not when it's you.
Yeah.
So someone tried at some point and it didn't go over well.
Yeah.
I mean, he just told Eva off for like developing attachments, and he's like, go away.
Yeah. Or like, didn't he, like, his last encounter with Rosewood, didn't he, my memory's fuzzy, didn't he like boot her out of his house and say like, no, you don't stay the night?
Yep.
Like, we don't do sleepovers.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if he said it that harshly, but that was like the impression. He was very cold. Like, no, we're done.
Oh gosh, that was
so like he's making all of these exceptions for Sam, and like you said, Jessica, it's very telling.
Yeah, he tells her those doe eyes of yours are dangerous. No wonder your father doesn't like you being around men. He's worried about all the hearts you could break. And yeah, it's telling me that he uses that phrase. He's worried about his heart being broken.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught up on that, because that was what I wrote in my notes. I was like, this isn't Charles being just afraid of her dad. This is him being afraid for his own heart.
Oh, our baby. And she's just nuzzling into his neck. She is just completely affectionate and tender. And then maybe a little more, because she clings to his hair, she sniffs him, and it looks like she's biting him, even though it says bite, even though I don't know that she's actually
biting her lip.
Biting going on.
Let's
biting her lip. That's what it was. Okay.
Let's look at her eyes for a minute. I'm sorry, y'all. Those are sex eyes.
Yes. Yep. And they're like,
girl is hungry.
Yeah, not surprising. I mean, she just got her first taste. Of course, she needs some more. And he's like, something on your mind, Bunty? Didn't get enough earlier. So cute. Yeah.
He's back to mischievous.
She stares at him for a second, blushes, and then she can't handle it and just hides right back. But again, instead of running away, she hides back into him, which is so beautiful.
Yeah. And I love that, like, after this point, he's like, okay, I've tested you enough. You're fun to tease. But then he changes the subject, and I think that was intentional, because he sees like, okay, I've made you blush like half the freaking morning. We don't want you to get lightheaded. Like, we'll change the subject for your benefit.
I mean, is it also for his own? I mean, we're talking about, he's still struggling. So the more she pushes him, is he also trying to take a step back and change topics because he doesn't feel comfortable anymore?
You're probably right.
Yep. And I love how he uses his like apparently Welsh terminology or language, because he calls her your shy little lamb. So it must be, I think it's a Welshian thing. I'm gonna call it me and my extensive knowledge of Welshness. But he Bunty does mean lamb from what I remember. So
yeah, that was cute. And then her little freak out at the end, like, hey, by the way, you have a dog and friends that you totally ghosted yesterday.
And notice last night she was like, oh, I have this thing I have to go to, and now she's like, she just used the word raid, right? Because she was embarrassed previously, but guess now he knows. Oh well.
Blame it on the alcohol, honey.
Yeah, it's cute.
So I'm curious, I want to hear from all of you. Who took care of Bowser last night? Because there's no way Monkey left Bowser home alone overnight. I think someone came and took care of him.
What does he need though? I mean, like,
he can survive overnight. And he probably needs food and snuggles.
Dogs are much more needy than cats.
I know, right? I only have 2 cats. And like, but don't they go like, don't you only need to take them out like once a day? Poop?
Oh, honey. No.
Okay. Sorry.
More like 5 times a day.
5 times a day? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Depending on how active your dog is.
So you said Marshall, that's who you think came to take care of Bowser?
There's the whole thing with like Bowser not liking Marshall, but then Marshall takes care of Bowser when Sam's gone, and then now
It's an
Now, we got
opportunity.
dog approval.
Yep.
It's an
Nice.
opportunity.
Does he have like
And
the key to her apartment, or he like breaks in because he hears Bowser whining?
he might have gone to the landlady and been like, hey, I'm really worried. The dog, like, look at me projecting and speculating. But
Yeah.
like he could have gone to the landlady and been like, hey, can you let me in? I'm really worried about her dog. Ensue hilarious shenanigans with him trying to like get along with Bowser. It could be
Yeah.
done.
And it would be a great episode. I would be here for it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can you imagine like Bowser's not going to be here for it, and then he's just going to have to be totally resigned, like, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, he's a cute one.
Mindy, do you have any, I mean, I guess you probably didn't think about it, but do you have any ideas as to who you think might be taking care of Bowser?
Marshall does seem like the most reasonable one, or Link perhaps, but he doesn't, Marshall's right there, so that makes sense.
I was thinking, because he also mentions the raid. Do we think that one of like the raid buddies reached out to Marshall to be like,
Right.
hey, can you check on Sam? And that's kind of what it does, because Marshall and Abe are kind of friends. I mean, did Abe reach out to Marshall and be like, hey, have you seen Sam?
Right, good idea.
And that brings up another great point, because no one's seen or heard from her. She just suddenly ghosted. So I imagine, like, if she was one of my friends, I'd be like, girl, where the hell are you? Are you okay? Like, because she goes to that raid without fail every week.
Yeah.
So that would be definitely be out of character and cause for safety concern.
Yep.
Right. And then once they find out who she was with, that would be gossipy concern.
Yes.
I don't think she's telling anyone.
Yeah.
I think she's going to keep it tight-lipped too, Carter. I don't think she's going to say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna have to make up one hell of a story for that.
Yeah. No, I'm sure Vicky and Angela will figure it out at some point. But
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
down
yeah.
the line.
Sam's a terrible liar.
Yes. Well, so should we do our bonus question about Endgame, which is basically just for you, Jessica?